I had the outline of Mr. Lionel Ashcombe's case from Miss Beatrice Orle, who was not imaginative and who disliked even the appearance of making a mystery where a catalogue number would do. She told it one Christmas Eve after dinner, when the fire had sunk low and the men nearest the hearth had ceased to contradict. It was Mr. Ashcombe's misfortune that he accepted, in good faith, a small commission at Wraxall, and that among the papers committed to him there lay one framed print which had better been left in its brown paper. Ashcombe was then engaged upon a paper promised for Michaelmas to the Society of Antiquaries, a body which respected him for the dryness of his conclusions and the neatness of his references. His subject was not one to disturb any household. The older posting houses of the West Country, their plans, signboards, stable yards, and such pictorial survivals as had escaped damp, fire, and the improvements of landlords. Wraxall, where the family had at one time owned half the village and the greater part of the turnpike, possessed a private library, neglected rather than ruined. And it was believed that among its portfolios and boxes there might be found drawings of the King's Head, an inn once of some consequence upon the old road. The house itself stood low, with its back to a dark belt of trees and its front looking upon a gravel sweep, beyond which the park sank toward meadows. The library occupied the southwest corner, though it had lost much of the sun to cedar branches planted too near the windows. It was a long room, wainscoted to the cornice, with presses below and shelves above, a marble chimney-piece yellowed by many winters, and, in the middle, the heavy writing desk covered with a faded green leather which had split in two places along the edge. There Mr. Ashcombe established himself, with slips, pencils, a magnifying glass, a small rule of boxwood, and that respectable patience by which the dead contrive now and then to be heard. Miss Orle, who had been left in practical charge while Sir James Rantry was abroad for his health, gave him the run of the room and the key of the lower cupboards. She was some years past 40, spare in speech, and exact in household matters. If she had any superstition, it was the superstition that things placed in drawers should be found there again, and that pasted labels should tell the truth. She remembered Ashcombe as a courteous man of middle height, already a little stooping, with that look of pale concentration which comes to scholars who work by lamplight and do not much regard mirrors. He gave little trouble, made no demands beyond a second inkstand, and at luncheon could be led from milestones to leases without imposing either topic upon his neighbour. For 3 days he sorted without reward. There were estate maps, surveys of timber, a bundle of recipes, 6 indifferent watercolours of ruined abbeys, and a portfolio of aquatints whose connection with Wraxall consisted in having been bought there at a sale in 1829. The day on which the mezzotint was found had been wet from morning, one of those late summer rains which darken the laurels and leave a smell of mould in rooms not much used. At about 4 o'clock, when the windows had already taken the colour of evening, Ashcombe opened the lowest compartment of the folio press, a place obstructed by rolled plans and 2 wormed drawing boards. At the back, set upright and almost hidden behind a cracked portfolio labelled Tithe Apportionment, he found a parcel wrapped in brown paper and tied crosswise with tape which had once been read. The paper was rough with dust, and one corner had been darkened by an old stain. On the outside, in a hand of the middle of the last century, were the words, "Maps, not wanted." Ashcombe did not cut the tape at once. He drew the parcel forward, laid it flat upon the writing desk, and brushed the surface with the side of his hand, as a man does who has learnt that an accident of dirt may preserve an accident of history. The shape was against the inscription. It had neither the give of folded linen nor the stiff breadth of a map case, and when the faded tape yielded under his knife, the brown paper opened upon a cracked black frame, its narrow moulding a little warped at the upper left-hand corner. The glass was sound, though clouded within by that grey powder which gathers where an old mount has fretted. Behind it was a mezzotint in the dark manner, its blacks deepening toward the centre, and its light scraped out with a cold precision. Ashcombe lifted it carefully and set it upon 2 calf-bound folios, so that the last of the afternoon might fall across it from the west window. In the lower margin, cramped but legible beneath a veil of grime, he read the title, "The Passage at the King's Head, Wraxall." It was the very sort of document for which he had hoped, though not in the form in which he had expected it. The print showed the interior passage of an inn, seen lengthwise from a point near the foot of a staircase. Doors receded on the right, their numbers suggested rather than plainly rendered. On the left hung a wall lamp with a little shield of glass, and beyond it the mezzotint grain thickened into that velvety obscurity in which 18th century engravers took pleasure. There was no figure in the foreground. The passage was empty, orderly, and still. When the servant brought the lamp, Ashcombe had already drawn the curtains and cleared a space upon the writing desk. The green shade threw a circle of steady light upon the cracked frame and left the shelves behind him in a brown dusk. He removed his spectacles, wiped them, replaced them, and began the first of those notes which Miss Orle afterwards saw copied into his memorandum book in the small square hand for which he was known among his friends. He recorded the frame first, black-painted soft wood, late or later reframed, glass, old, perhaps contemporary with mounting, backing board loose at lower edge, no visible publisher's line except beneath dirt. Then the print itself, mezzotint, approximately 10 inches by 7.5 within the plate mark. Impression worn, but not retouched. Title in lower margin. Paper discoloured at edges. These facts gave him evident satisfaction. He was not a man to exclaim over a find, but Miss Orle, entering to ask whether he preferred the window left unlatched, noticed that he had pushed aside his tea untasted, and that a certain severity had gone out of his face. Under the single green-shaded lamp, he examined it with professional pleasure. The plate mark was clean where the mount had protected it, though flattened at the lower right corner. The upper corners had been rubbed by the frame. There was a brown stain near the engraved wall lamp, shaped like a spill and following no line of the design. And just below the lower margin, in the paper itself and not in the copper, was a small wormhole, round as if made with a needle. He measured these things and set them down, for he had the excellent habit of suspecting his own eyesight until it had been corrected by a rule. The passage in the print interested him more as his eye grew used to the manner. It was not an architectural drawing, yet it preserved particulars which a drawing might have missed. The deep skirting along the wall, the slight rise of the boards toward the back, the old-fashioned hinges on the nearest door, and the painted numerals upon 2 or 3 panels receding into darkness. The lamp in the engraving hung from a bracket, not unlike one still preserved in the stable court at Wraxall, and the turn of the passage, where it disappeared beyond the last visible door, agreed with an account of the King's Head in a lease of 1774, which mentioned the upper passage leading towards the Blue Chamber and the back stair. At the far end, where the mezzotint grain thickened and the eye could not be sure whether it read intention or accident. There stood, or seemed to stand, a minute upright scratch. Ashcombe drew the lamp a little nearer, then moved it back again, unwilling to let reflection from the glass impose a shape upon the print. The mark was slender, darker on one side, and broken at the top. It might have been a post, a flaw in the ink, a fold of hanging cloth, or the suggestion of a person placed deep in the corridor to give scale to the composition. He wrote, after a pause, minute upright mark in passage, left of apparent centre, character uncertain. I may say here, since it bears upon the account, that Miss Orle insisted on this point with some firmness. Mr. Ashcombe was not seeking marvels. He was pleased with the print because it promised to supply a lost plan, not because it offered a puzzle. And had the mark remained a blemish, it would have had from him no more than the half line I have quoted. The back of the frame next claimed his attention. It had been sealed at some earlier time with strips of paper, now browned and cracked, over which a later hand had driven 3 small brads. Ashcombe hesitated before disturbing it, for he disliked unnecessary injury to old mounts, but the possibility of an engraver's name, a publisher's address, or a note of provenance determined him. With the thin blade of his penknife, he lifted the lowest strip, easing the paper from the wood in flakes, and drew out one brad after another, laying them in a row upon a visiting card, lest they should be lost in the grain of the desk. The backing board came away with a faint dry smell, compounded of dust, paste, and old paper. No inscription appeared upon the copper's margin beyond what the glass had shown. Between the board and the print, however caught near the lower bar of the frame, was a folded slip of writing paper, so thin and yellow that he opened it with the back of the knife rather than with his fingers. It had been doubled twice, without an envelope, and bore on the outside only the woe.